Yo guys, what is up? Max here with Remnant 2 video, and today we're going over my absolutely broken Ritualist status effect build. Now, the Ritualist is the new archetype that was released in the DLC yesterday. If you want to get it, you have to buy the DLC, but the class purely focuses on status effect damage, which is one of my favorite things to do in like damage-based video games, is make like status effect builds, and the Ritualist absolutely delivers. And today I want to show you guys some of the most broken damage that you can do right now in the game, and how to set it up. Hope you guys enjoy the video. Let's get right into it. So we're just going to do a quick damage rotation, and then we'll get into how everything is working here. So we're going to start by throwing our axe, and I'm going to pop my corrosives, and then my fire. Now we've got a bunch of different elements going, and as you'll see, we are now breaking the DPS meter. We're at 12,000 DPS per second, and at that little rotation did 122,000 damage in just a few seconds, and we break the DPS meter with this setup. It's really quite crazy. All right, let's talk about how this works. So just a quick disclaimer, I am new to Remnant 2. I only beat the game for the first time 2 days ago, so I don't have everything unlocked. I don't have all my weapons maxed. I'm missing a ton of rings and amulets and stuff, but I want to show you guys what I'm doing and like the reasons that I'm doing them, so that when you hop on and you've got like maxed out gear and maxed out weapons, you can be doing way more damage than I am currently dealing. So this build that I'm using right now is a synergy between the Ritualist archetype and the Challenger archetype. There are a bunch of other archetypes that work with this combo. The reason I went Challenger is because I want to take advantage of close quarters. This is a very close range build, and close quarters is going to give us, when we're max rank, 35% increase to all damage to enemies within 10 meters. All damage is the most important scaling for our like status effect damage. So I think the Challenger is a really good archetype, and the Rampage archetype skill, once we get it at rank 10, is going to give us more fire rate, reload speed, and movement speed, as well as range damage, and it's going to give us the ability to wear heavier armor so that we can be more tanky. So I think Ritualist and Challenger are going to be really nice paired together, giving us all damage, giving us survivability, giving us fire rate, reload speed, everything that we kind of need. And then the Ritualist is taking care of our status effect stuff. We've got the Prime perk. We're going to put Ritualist in our Prime slot, which gives us negative status effects always imply infected. Victims receive 5% more status effect damage. On death, spreads all statuses to nearby enemies. This spread status effects is very, very powerful. We're doing a ton of status effect damage on this build, and the ability to spread those status effects on death allows you to mob really well. If there's a few enemies together clumped up, they just do not stand a chance against you. The Ritualist also gives us increased status effect duration against enemies by 50%. This is massive. This is massively increasing our damage, as we'll get to in a second. And then also we've got all of our perks to give us more status effect damage, to make enemies that are status effect deal less damage, and so on and so forth. And I do think that we're probably going to be using, ideally, once we're like fully leveled, we're going to be using Death Wish on this build. Negates all healing to self, drain 300% health over 20 seconds, increase all damage by 35%, and grant 10% base damage dealt as lifesteal. This could be really strong, giving us another 35% with our other 35% from close quarters, 70% increase all damage, which would just be crazy. And I think Miasma is also going to be really good on this build as well. The like Eruption's pretty strong, but we're just not using it as much on this build. Now let's get to our big synergies. So the real synergy that we're using here is dot damage paired with the Energized Net Coil. Now, the Energized Net Coil increases our status effect damage by 25%. Applying a damaging status effect creates a 5-meter explosion for 20% of the status effect's full damage. So how this reads is we're going to want a status effect that deals a ton of damage, and it doesn't matter how long the status effect takes to deal that damage, because we're going to get an instant proc of 20% of that instantly. So we're pairing that with the Timekeeper's Jewel. This increases the duration of all status effects applied by the wearer. Duration varies per status. So for example, on my Witchfire that I'm using, if I take, we'll show both. So I'm getting 37 seconds on my like corrosive damage on my Nebula, and I've got 25 seconds on my Witchfire. If I take this off, now all of a sudden I only have 15 seconds. This used to be 37 seconds, so I've lost half of my damage, and this went from 25 seconds to 15 seconds. So we really, really, really want the Timekeeper's Jewel. I'll have like locations at the end of the video. So we're pairing Energized Net Coil with Timekeeper's Jewel, and then we're using multiple different status effects, as well as stacking different status effects on enemies. Now, not all status effects are created equal. Originally, I was just using the Nebula. Let's like back up and reset this. So the Nebula, it does this constant stream, and it's really strong. It melts bosses, but it's only doing as many ticks as fast as our fire rate is, right? If we have more fire rate, we get to do more ticks. And I was like, well, we need something that does like really high fire rate, or something that can like do like a damage over time on the ground, which is exactly what Witchfire is. Now watch Witchfire. Witchfire does a burn, and that burn is continuous, and it procs very, very quickly. As long as an enemy is actually in the like radius of our Witchfire, now we're doing like an obscene amount of damage. We're almost at 10,000 DPS without me doing like my rotation. And so that procs this amulet really, 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 really often. Now, to pair with that, I'm using, just for some like quality of life, you could obviously go all in on this stuff, but I'm currently using the Atonement Fold. This gives us self-inflicts bleeding status upon the wearer, causing 1.1 bleed damage per second, and increases our crit chance by 10%. We're pairing that with the Alchemy Stone Ring, which just increases our base lifesteal by 6% while suffering from a negative status effect or blight effect. This rounds out our survivability for the build. Obviously, if we die instantly, doing all this damage doesn't really mean anything. So this means that we are constantly going to be regenning to full. I don't know if there's a way for me to like damage myself here, but literally with the amount of damage that we're doing, your health just shoots up. So you're really hard to kill. The Challenger is giving us even more defenses, so you're a walking tank. And then we're also going to be pairing that with the Blasting Cap Ring. Now, this is kind of like the most optional ring slot that you could use. You could use anything here just to increase your damage. However, I have found that the explosions that we're doing are doing the most damage for us, and those scale with explosion damage, those white numbers. So, for example, if I take our explosion ring off, we were just doing 220s. Let's reload here, and then fire back in, and now we're doing 206s. So, a lot of options, but I've just been using the explosive ring because it scales that explosive damage, which is the majority of our damage right now, proccing off of all of our status effects. For weapons, we're using Ford Scattergun. Ford Scattergun is really great at just giving us our mod power back on our shots. It does a ton of damage as well, but if you're hitting your shots with your like explosion Witchfires, because it's proccing so much on this setup, as you can see, I basically have unlimited mod uses. So yeah, we could just spam all of those mods there. It looks like we've reached over 30,000 DPS because we were hitting multiple targets at once. I'm actually curious to what this is going to read out. 98,000. It looked like we might have hit 30,000 DPS on those enemies. But Ford Scattergun, I've got Fetid Wounds right now on, which increases our crit chance of this weapon by 3% per unique status effect on the enemy. But more importantly, when we get to level 10, this weapon ranged weak spot and ranged critical hits will apply Corroded. So then we're going to get 2 status effects from this thing. We go pop in the head and then shoot the fire for even more damage, which is going to be crazy. I've got the Krell Axe. The Krell Axe does a like shock pulse. That shock pulse on this build currently is lasting for 25 seconds, so it's just another status effect that we can stack on enemies. And then the Nebula with Maelstrom. This increases the weapon's elemental damage by 8.5% per unique elemental status effect on the target. And then level 10, it increases our mod power and generation of elemental damage and elemental status damage by 20%. If you want, you could swap the Maelstrom over to the Ford Scattergun. And like swap Fetid Wounds over. I just think that the crit status effect is better suited for the Scattergun. Guys, that is going to do it for the video. I hope you enjoyed. I didn't really talk too much about my traits just because I really don't have many traits available to me. So I've got like mod generation and skill cooldown, increasing my AoE and some like health stuff, but not really anything too interesting there. But yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. I do think that this is most likely a bug and is going to get patched. So if it does get patched, or when it does get patched, I'll have an updated video. But I just wanted to show this off because it's so much fun. Let me know if you enjoy the Remnant content. Once again, this is my very first Remnant video. And so yeah, I'll catch y'all in the next one, guys. Take care. Peace.